Hello everyone out there. This is Kristin Brindley, publisher of DC Metro Real Producers, and I'm here with Bo and Kimber Menkiti and with Lechias and Anthony Mason. They were on our cover of DC Metro Real Producers, our February couples issue, our power couple issue. If you didn't check that out on page 42, definitely do so. This group is very distinguished. I mean, Bo and Kimber, their KWCP did $2.4 billion in business this past year, and they own 1.5 million square feet of real estate in the general area here in the DMV. And their charity has given $1 million, or it's been donated $1 million to their charity at this point. And the team itself are a $100 million producing team, and they have collaborated together with the Masons, and they were extremely successful on their own right, and this collaboration and this move to grow together is the theme of what we want to talk about. And I want to hear a little bit about each person, how they came into real estate. I believe all four of you, it was like a part-time, at start. And Bo and Kimber, if we could start with you guys, and then Anthony, and then Lechias, and maybe explain what you're doing with your team with that now too, because I was amazed what I heard both what you all are doing. So yeah, go ahead, Bo and Kimber. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, it's quite a story. I mean, this story of collaborating and growing has been a theme throughout our lives and throughout our business experience. So my background was in the corporate world. I worked in corporate strategy consulting, and then I got into the nonprofit world and was the chief operating officer of an organization called College Summit that worked with low-income high school students to apply to college. And I thought I had found my calling. I was making a difference. I was using my business skills. I had bought a home. I bought my first home in Columbia Heights. And back then there was a lot of vacant properties on my block. I was a block from the metro station, and it was just my house and the house next door. Mrs. Bex, who had lived there for many, many years, lived next door. And I came back from one of my trips around the country, thinking I was doing the Lord's work. I was amazing. And I came home, and I used to help Mrs. Bex with her trash and her groceries because she didn't have any family. And she lived there for 65 years, and I bought the renovated house right next to her. And I came back from one of these trips around the country, and Mrs. Bex had passed away. And I found her in her house. Nobody had checked on her, so she'd been there for about 2 weeks. And it was a real wake-up call for me that I thought I was changing the world, but I wasn't present in the neighborhood that I was in. And so my launch into real estate came from that. I woke up the next day and I looked around my community and I said, there's a number of vacant homes. What can I do to fix them up? And I was really dumb back then. I didn't know that getting a real estate license didn't teach you how to fix homes. So I went and I signed up for the real estate course and I got my real estate license, but I was still working part-time. And so when I first walked into a real estate office and said, I'd like to become a realtor, they told me, hey, we don't take part-time people. We don't have time for part-time people, come back when you're serious. So, well, I run this company and I come back later. So I finally found a place, a little office that would take me. I couldn't even go to the main office. It's like the satellite office of another brand. And I started as a realtor. And I told Kimber that because I was becoming a realtor, I was going to have all this free time to spend with her. We were dating and getting very serious then. We weren't married yet. I said, I was going to make lots of time to meet her. So that's how I launched the business. Had some success part-time, was the rookie of the year part-time. I think there's a theme of that as you get on to the Masons. And then slowly looped Kimber in, but maybe Kimber can tell the story of how she came into the business and got started.
Yeah, so Bo definitely, he actually got the office that was around the corner from my apartment at the time in Capitol Hill, under this promise that he was going to have all this extra free time as he started his real estate career, and sold me my first house. I had just graduated from grad school and had I was one of his very first clients. As my family was like, "This is interesting. Are you guys dating? He's selling you a house? What's going on here?" So as the business really got started, I was continuing the nonprofit sector, which is where Bo and I met at College Summit, and I had continued on working for the Archdiocese of Washington in the counseling team there. And so I really, same thing, like started part-time. I was just going to help. We had actually Bo just purchased the first condo project that the team was going to do in Brookland, 21-unit condo project. And so really we didn't have the sales team to do it. So I thought I'll get my license, I'll help out part-time and sort of be prepared to sell this condo on the nights and weekends. And pretty quickly that accelerated. And at the end of that school year, I made the transition to full-time, and also was the rookie year Rookie of the Year for G-Car, so that's definitely a theme of our group. But this idea that, you know, from that part-time world and just sort of what those habits were to get started and to really dig into the business. And that was in 2007, right? We think we're in a shift right now, but that really was the shift. I mean, I got my license and like the music stopped, right? And I didn't know any different, but I literally, I would get in and people were like, you just got licenses, like, do you know what's going on? I mean, like, what's happening? And so in some ways that created the best habits, because I didn't have the height of the market where people were like writing offers on top of their car and running them to sellers, and you would drive people to open houses. We had a market where, you know, it was 100% buyer market. We had short sales, right? It was a different time, but it created really important habits.
And I remember one last thing, when Kimber first got in the business, I remember saying to her, we're going to sell 100 homes. We're going to sell 100 homes. Back then we were doing like 50. So we're going to sell 100 homes. And it's like a couple of years. And she's like, that's crazy. You can't sell 100 homes. And then like a year and a half after she was in the business, we passed 100 homes.
You got to.
I passed 100 homes.
She passed 100 homes and I just watched. Okay.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Great job.
So for us, the narrative was a little different in terms of getting into I guess we'll start with the beginning piece. So I was in the military for 10 years, couple of deployments in.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you. So a couple of deployments into that, I did presidential support specifically. I lived in Italy for a while, then got stationed here at Andrews Air Force Base, where I worked very closely in and off of Air Force One. So did that for a while, and then transitioned to DIA, where I worked for about 8 years on some special projects. So it was in that where, after getting out of the military, I actually deployed more as a civilian than I did as a service member. Mm-hmm. And I was going into my second Afghan deployment, and Lechias at that point was fed up with me leaving her for 6-7 months at a time with the kids. At the time, we just had Chloe, but it was a pivoting point for us, because I came back. I missed all of the baby stuff with Chloe. Came back, she's walking the whole 9 yards.
He left when she was 12 months old and came back, she was 18 months
Potty
old.
trained and walking. So I had missed that entire piece, only to come back, and she really didn't know who I was. So I was getting ready to go back out like 12 months after. And then on my way out, Sheikah was like, well, why are you doing this again? I'm like, look, the job wants me to go. The money's great.
We needed the money.
Yeah,
we had a baby, daycare, a house that we just bought, and we were like, we're broke. We need money.
So my dad being in the business, you know, something I always avoided. Like, my dad, very successful in real estate, but the time that it demanded from him was something I wanted no parts of. So it wasn't until Sheikah was like, hey, like, you're really good at sales. Like, why don't you get into real estate? I'm like, nope, not doing it. Similar to Michael Jordan and his kids, none of them play basketball. So for me, it was just one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to do it. So she's like, look, I signed up for the class. I signed you up for the class. I'm flying Chloe to my mother's for a month, where we worked 5 days a week. And then our real estate class was Saturday, Sunday. So it was no days off for a month and a half.
In May.
And Mother's Day was coming up. She sacrificed seeing Chloe for Mother's Day, but I ended up flying her to Charlotte for the day to go and see her for Mother's Day. But it was just, to me, there was no reason for me not to do it, because she had went through everything she did to get us in. So I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. So as a track athlete, me playing basketball, it became competition. I'm like, cool, you signed us up for this, I'm gonna kick your butt in this class. So she sat next to me, and I had a really good rapport with the teacher. So, you know, I was like the teacher's pet.
He was.
So I would go in, and, you know, there's another story, there's a whole nother part to it. I won't go into that part because it was actually pretty funny. But we were in the class. She would try to cheat off my paper sometimes. I would cover my paper to where she couldn't see it. And then we would compare test answers, everything.
He was just way too competitive.
Yeah, so,
anyway, long story short.
passed, everything was done. We got into real estate. We found out how expensive it was to get into real estate at the beginning. So it was a culture shock, because we were a couple days out from the class finishing, and they're like, oh, hey, by the way, the time in which you're joining, it's going to cost you about $3,000 to get into the business. And I'm looking at Sheikah like, oh my gosh, we don't have $3,000. We don't have $6,000 to get us both in the business. So I was like, look, we'll put it on a credit card. I'll get started. Once I get my feet wet, we'll bring you in. So
meanwhile, he already had 3 clients lined up. He had people at his job that wanted to buy, and they were waiting for him to get his license. So he already had 3 clients lined up before he even got his license.
Yeah.
So yeah, long story short, basically we got our license. He got into the business first. He was in the business, rookie of the year, his first year.
So we didn't have, our local association of realtors didn't have rookie of the year at the time. They had it and it went away. So I was recognized as the rookie of the year for the region for Keller Williams International instead. So that was just kind of the story behind that. Didn't know anything about it. Got invited to Orlando, went and was rookie of the year. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. And that was all while working a full-time job. So his clients did not know he had a full-time job unless they were clients at his job. But for the most part, he made sure that he would have his calls go to his desk. So he would answer his calls at his desk, different things like that, put things on his calendar. We worked and lived by a calendar. I was basically his showing assistant or his admin until I actually got into the business, which was a year after Anthony.
Yeah.
So
story,
my story is
see how she takes over? She told my story for me.
I'm sorry.
It works so well together. I see the by-play back and forth. It's great. Go ahead, Lechika. Tell us.
Okay. So my background is accounting, which works very well for me and Anthony when we started as a team. So, I just basically looked at costs or what we could get a return on investment on with anything. If we put in money for any advertisements, I want to see how much money we got back. I want at least that amount back.
Just a short little piece of that with her accounting piece. The reason why I was very, I wanted her in the business sooner than later, because I had to justify every expense in the business that she didn't understand. She's like, well, what is this? What are these leads you're paying for? I'm like, babe, I have to do this to get more business. So the only way to get her in
is just so
right.
What is this?
What is this $300 that's going out twice, in the same month? And that was one of the bigger reasons because of her accounting hat.
Yeah. So, graduated from UNC Charlotte with an accounting degree and worked as a bookkeeper and then went on to federal government and I worked for the Department of State. And there I was a budget analyst. So I ran a lot of projects, $30 billion projects for the government and just made sure they stayed on track and did their budgets. So for me, my passion is numbers. Nothing else makes sense to me but numbers and numbers don't lie. So with that, basically going into this full-time as well, my out was me getting pregnant with our second kid, my out for my full-time job. So our second kid, 2015, I said, I don't want to go back to work. So I'm going to take a year off. I took a year off of work, leave without pay, worked the business. We worked it together and we doubled our numbers, our income and everything. So we were like, you know what, we can do this. We're close to, $1 million GCI, just the two of us and a transaction coordinator. We can do this, And
I think the biggest part with that too,
yes, you can.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity for me as well to actually transition out of my job because while she was home, leave without pay, I had my daddy time, which I think was, they gave me 2 months or something. And then I did leave without pay also. I wasn't paid while I was out because I was like, look, this is an opportunity for us to both stay home. I can focus on you and the kids. Everything can come together because financially we couldn't do that the first time. Mm-hmm. So that was an opportunity for us. And then I had an epiphany when I went back to work and I had a bad day with my supervisor. And then I came home and Googled a letter of resignation and just changed the name and at the top and bottom and signed it.
Yeah. So we both resigned. We both worked the business full time and we were like, okay, we can do this. And so we never went back to work. We just resigned from our federal government positions. And then we've been this since 2015. Yeah, when Kylie was born in 2015, full-time agents.
So I love y'all's story. Tell us about Lyft and this program that you've made to help others transition, from part-time to full-time.
Lyft is a program that MG Residential started. MG Residential Lyft is a group of agents. Lyft stands for Launching into Full-Time. And so my passion for transitional agents led me to develop this group of agents that they do have a full-time job, but they aspire to be full-time agents. And so, Bo, Kimber, Anthony, myself, we're all transitional agents. So Bo and Kimber and Anthony were like, hey, we love the idea. She could run with it. And so I did. And so we have 4 agents on that team right now. We're looking to do our next round of agents in 2 months. And I just look forward to just helping people launch from having their full-time jobs into a full-time position on a real estate team.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the systems themselves that you've put in place to help these people go from part-time to full-time? Like what are you guys doing? It sounds amazing and should have been done already in lots of ways for lots of people.
Okay, so each agent on the Lyft team, which is separate from our full-time team. So we're keeping the culture of our full-time agents. So they're separate from the Lyft agents. So the Lyft agents, since they're transitional, we're building the culture. And what we're doing is each agent has, they were started with a passport, an educational passport for training. So they have to check off, and their little passport looks like an actual passport of all the trainings that they do. So you have to do a training a week. Every week and check off on that, and they have to come back to us and just tell us exactly what the training was and give tickers or any ahas to the team. Also, they have an accountability coach. So they meet with their accountability coach 30 minutes once a week. They also do cash talks with their coach as well, accountability coach just about every day. Also, we have call nights. So every Thursday night, we do everything in the evening. It's kind of like night school because they have a full-time job during the day. So their sales meeting that we have once a week is every Monday evening. And then we have a call night every Thursday night, to where we sit and we lead gen together and we make calls together to lead gen. So they have just the blueprint in order for them to launch from being transitional agents into being a full-time agent.
Yeah, I think the importance of it, and really with them being separated and what she's talking about in terms of culture, is because we don't want to insert someone into the full-time team that doesn't have all of the practices required to be successful on the larger side. So we're giving them all the fundamentals. We're teaching them, just like if you ever heard about the NBA coach who taught them how to put their socks on first, that's what we're starting with. We're having them put their socks on, and once you know how to put the socks on, then we can put the ball in the net. So that's really important to us, is making sure they come in with that culture, because oftentimes, and I've heard from several top producing agents where they talk about the resetting of a team, because the culture gets away from going out hunting and gathering leads to being lead receiving. So if we teach them how to fish, they'll be able to do it for a lifetime. They'll always contribute to the success of the team. So that's why we feel as though the importance of everything is all the fundamentals. And then from there, once we unleash them, it's going to be nothing but success. So
which is the training and the call nights and all the different things that we're implementing.
Yeah, they have a certain amount of contacts they have to do by the end of the week. So all of those things that we've put in place is really just setting them up for when they want to hit the switch and say, we're full-time.
And the Lyft agents are also part of the Miracle Morning.
Yes.
Well, and you've given people a space with the right mindset and met people where they're at to help them get where they want to be. And I think that's fantastic. So I'm excited for your people in your Lyft program and the people to come. So this is an amazing group. Can you all define success for me?
It's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations about what is success. Like, why are you doing this? What are you trying to do? And I think in many ways to define success, you have to define what matters to you, or what your purpose is, right? Where you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve. And I think a theme that ties, all of us together, and the two of us two as couples, as two different couples together, is a bit of passion for letting talent shine. You heard it in the Lyft program. You heard it in the growth. This idea that there's latent capacity in people, in careers, and in communities, and in physical buildings, that if you can tap into it and you can let it out, it can serve the world in an amazing way. And that's what's behind this mission of transforming lives, careers, and communities through real estate. So then it brings you to the question, how do you do that, right? How do you have success in that? How do you actually let that go forward? And I think that's still a journey. We're still learning. But in my mind, success is the opportunity to continue to learn and to grow, and to have the learning and the growing and the steps that we take, the platform that we build, be able to be a launching pad for those that come behind us, right? This sense that oftentimes in real estate, we're just trying to get success, and we're trying to get it for ourselves. But ultimately, when we think, more about the infinite nature of business and the ongoing nature of what's going on, we are just stepping stones along a path. And the question becomes, how can we create that opportunity for those that are around us. So I wrote a letter to myself when I started the business that I said I was going to open 10 years later. And the letter said, hopefully we'll have achieved these things and you'll have the opportunity that you could leave the business. And that was like, you could tell my thinking, I was kind of like, dot, 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 dot. But wouldn't it be really fun to do it all over again with all the learning and resources and with other people once you've built the business already? And so to me, this next phase of success for us is about learning how you take what you've learned, how you continue to learn more, and how you have that be a path and a stepping stone for way more talented people like Anthony and Lechika to come along behind to hop off of that stepping stone and go much further than we ever could have gone in our own lives or by ourselves.
So how did, as couples, you all meet each other? So how did you become couples? So like Bo and Kimber, how did you guys meet? Anthony, Lechika, how did you guys meet? And then how did y'all end up coming together to collaborate to, have the team together?
So Bo and I actually met as a couple. We are working together. So it's sort of interesting that we still work together today, 20 years later. But that was, Bo was working at College Summit, which is a nonprofit organization that helps low-income high school seniors get access to college. And I was that summer, before I went off to grad school in Pennsylvania, I stopped to spend the summer doing workshops to facilitate for these high school seniors. And so we met there, and then immediately launched into a long distance relationship as I moved to Pennsylvania. And so we spent a lot of time back and forth up and down 95. So as you hear my son asking, really, you lived in Pennsylvania?
That's great.
So that has been the legacy. It started there, and then we went off on our separate journeys professionally, and here we are in a big life and career together.
Awesome. Anthony and I met when I was 14 years old. Anthony was going on 16 years old at an amusement park called Carowinds, and it's on the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. And so I wasn't supposed to have a boyfriend, but he was like, hey, I think you're cute. You're Shayna's sister, right? Here's your, let me give you my number. Call me. And so I ended up calling him like 2 weeks later. And then from there, we've always been like really good friends, and we're married 15 years now. So that's our high school love story.
I love you guys' stories. I'm really glad we're talking this. So how did you all end up working together? And I mean, with families, and I mean, you have 4 boys, you guys have a couple kids yourself, like, you guys are all juggling a lot of things. As we saw, kids coming up, and it's interesting in this time. So how did you all end up working together? And maybe if there's a couple of tips that you guys have for working as a couple, because this was the couples issue, like, do you guys have some tips for people working together, building a life together at home and at work?
So I was like, hey, Kimber, I reached out to Kimber, asked if we can just go, out to dinner or something. I thought we were going out to eat, but Kimber was like, oh no, how about come to my house? I was like, babe, we're going to your house.
The kids just left the pool.
Right. She's like, come on over. Bo's going to cook on a grill. I'm like, okay, but should we bring our kids? And she's like, yeah. At the time we had a 7-year-old and a terrific 2-year-old, like very terrific. And so I was like, okay, we'll bring the kids. Are you sure? And she's like, yes, bring the kids. I had 4 boys. What, how bad could two girls be? So I was like, okay, cool. So we come over, we're having a good time. Bo, is cooking on the grill, food's great. We got bottles of wine, having a good time talking and just learning from Bo and Kimber. And we really appreciate the time that we had at their house. The only thing is, the fun part or the funny part of it is, or embarrassing for me, is our terrific 2-year-old actually peed on Kimber's stool. I was like, I'm so sorry, Kimber. She peed. Kimber's like, it's okay.
With other boys, I'm like, this happens.
That's amazing.
I will never forget that. And we really appreciate the time. Like, we learned so much from them during that time. We were talking about building a team, like the Mason team at the time. And we're like, how do we do this? Where do we go? And, Bo and Kimber, they were very instrumental with us building that team. And we never thought that this was going to come about. Like,
and Bo in his Yoda-esque type of way was like, so what do you want to do? And at the time, we didn't even pick up it was like, I don't know.
We want to build a team.
Yeah,
and we're thinking about collaborating with some other team, and we're thinking about doing this. And he's like, oh, okay, but never once did I think like, maybe this could be something, you know, us four together could be a great partnership. Until last year.
We went to family reunion, not this past one, but 2019. Mm-hmm. And people walking across the stage, you hear about production, and then you hear about like some collaborations that had occurred. And at that point, I told Shika, I was like, we are walking across that stage, and we have to figure out how we're going to do it, and who do we need to align ourselves with. So we started going through.
We're thinking about other like top teams in our brokerage and things like that, and thinking maybe we can all just combine and collaborate and do something great or whatever. And then one day, April 2019, I was like, you know what? Let me call Kimber once again. And so Anthony reached out to Martin Weldon, and I reached out to Kimber, and then we were in the office like within like a couple of days, and we were just like, let's see what this can go, like what's there, and I don't know if Kimber or Bo wants to jump in.
Yeah, I think part of it's that there was just that relationship. I think being in a brokerage in the KW space where there's just this culture of sharing, that first, like summer dinner was just a chance for us to connect and learn more and see how we could support their business and they could support our business. And that, I think that those relationships and those partnerships are sort of the sparks that allow for future collaboration. And then once we started to like really talk about it and talk about the goals that we had and the vision that we had and the culture that were really important to us, there was a ton of alignment, right? When you start to think about what we saw for the vision of both the team, but also like other opportunities, because I think with Anthony and Lechika have like their drive for investments and supporting the communities and having a geographic farm. There was just a lot of overlap in how we saw the business and how we saw wealth building for our families and for the people that were in business with us. And so I think that really started to pave the way. And it definitely isn't easy, right? I just talked to somebody the other day and he was like, how's it going? Like, and nothing's easy, right? But none of our businesses are. And so the part of that, it takes work, right? Like one of the things that we've committed to, it's been a little harder in the COVID world, is just that once a month we were going to get together, like we meet weekly, but that we were going to get together and just have fun together, whether that's with our families or we go out to dinner, or just that we actually get to support each other as couples, as people. And Anthony and Lechika have been great mentors for Bo and I for that, right? And they have a long relationship together. And as you see, right, they work really well together. And so it's just, I think that has been one of the dynamics that I've enjoyed most in the partnership, is that we get to support each other on all different facets of our lives.
There's this interesting thing, right? And it exists in the partnership of marriage, obviously, in a much deeper way, but it also exists in the partnership between the couples, which is that there's this, it's challenging, and we hash it out, we battle back and forth, we have our moments, and that exercise of being in that kind of relationship, that collaboration, one takes an investment of time. It takes a huge investment over time, and that's challenging. It requires being okay with the ups and downs, the blows to the ego and the differences of opinion and the arguments that happen. But ultimately, it's so much richer and it's so much fuller if you're able to go down that road, not just from what you can accomplish. It's very clear that you're going to have to be willing to take some challenges to get there. Once you get to that place of collaboration, you can accomplish so much more in business, but also life can just be a lot more fun. And I think that's true. We've learned so much from Anthony and Lechika, not just about business, but about being a couple. In many ways, they're mentors to us in how to be a couple in the way they work together. And they have an amazing, Kimber and I are both big personalities and big egos, and that often clashes for us. They're the same, but they have a much more, this beautiful, delicate dance they do of how, Shika lets Anthony be the star, and then she kind of slowly reminds him that she's actually in charge. And they have this whole thing they do that is just, it's phenomenal. And me and Kimber's looks more like we bump up against each other, and theirs looks like this nice little dance that happens every time. So it's nothing to see.